In the early years of the 19th century, crime began to explode. Thousands of gangs emerged in Chicago alone within 1 year. Sure, law enforcement agencies like the FBI and police tried to stunt the expansion and longevity of gang activities, but there was no easy cure. With wallets bursting from bootlegging profits, gangs outfitted themselves with Tommy guns and operated with impunity by paying off politicians and police alike. Rival gangs led by the powerful Al Scarface Capone and the hot-headed George Bugs Moran turned the city streets into a virtual war zone with their gangland clashes. So much that, by 1926, more than 12,000 murders were taking place every year across America.
While crime rose and politicians were paid off, the top officials of the nation had been drawn into shady business deals. In the early 20s, the second biggest scandal of American political history broke out, the Teapot Dome scandal. In 1920, the power of oil reserves had been given to the sole discretion of the current Secretary of the Navy in order to benefit the United States. The naval oil reserves were 3 rich oil tract lands set aside by the Taft administration to provide naval ships with fuel in case of a national emergency. Congress gave the Secretary of the Navy control over the reserves through the Naval Appropriation Bill, which was approved on June 4, 1920. It provided that the Secretary of the Navy would have the power to conserve, develop, use, and operate the same in his discretion, directly or by contract, lease or otherwise, and to use, store, exchange, or sell the oil and gas products thereof, and those from all royalty oil from lands in the naval reserves for the benefit of the United States. After the bill was passed, Albert B. Fall rigorously sought after control of this power. The president of the time, President Harding, agreed to allow Fall the responsibility of the jurisdiction of oil reserves, and through Executive Order 3474, power was transferred. Soon after Fall received power, he leased 2 of the oil reserves in legal contract. And as for the Teapot Dome in Wyoming, he secretly leased to his longtime friend and owner of one of the largest petroleum companies in the world, Harry Sinclair. The reserve was estimated to be worth upwards of $100 million, and Hall only received $409,000 in cash and bonds. Due to publicity revealing Fall's expensive, lavish spending, people began to wonder about Fall's wealth. After further investigation, Fall was convicted and sent to prison on counts of bribery. This case was a huge deal to many as they became suspicious of other people's strategies to attain wealth. People began losing faith, hope, and trust in the government. Many people's perspectives revolved around the question, if the head officials are corrupt, how do they expect citizens to respect them?
Chicago, an estimated 1,300 gangs had spread like an epidemic by the mid-1920s. Local police forces lacked modern tools and training to maintain control, allowing bank robbery, kidnapping, auto theft, gambling, and drug trafficking to become increasingly common. During Prohibition, thousands of federal agents were hired to enforce the new laws against selling alcohol. In spite of this, historians estimate that only about 5% of all illegal liquor produced in the U.S. was ever intercepted. Although many could create the assumption that police officers were just lazy and incapable, however, many police officers were being bought off. The extent of mafia influence on Chicago is still not fully appreciated, even by long-term residents. We think of mobs hijacking trucks, not ballot boxes. Infamous gangsters were ingenious money-making tycoons. The realization that federal agents made $1,800 a year allowed them to easily bribe the police and thrive. There was so much money to be made in bootleg liquor that they could easily be bribed. The incentive to work for the criminals was so high that sometimes an agent could make $500 a day just by letting his underworld contact know that he was not going to show up to work that day. This allowed drugs, alcohol, and many other crimes easy to commit without the risk of being caught. All of these combinations led to an uproar of organized crime as we know it.
One of the most famous American gangsters, Al Capone, also known as Scarface, rose to infamy as the leader of the Chicago Mafia during the Prohibition era. Before being sent to Alcatraz prison in 1931 from a tax evasion conviction, he had earned a personal fortune estimated at $100 million and was responsible for countless murders. Al Capone, only 26 years old, was in charge of a very large crime organization that included brothels, nightclubs, dance halls, racetracks, gambling establishments, restaurants, speakeasies, breweries, and distilleries. As a major crime boss in Chicago, Capone put himself in the public's eye. Capone was an outlandish character. He dressed in colorful suits, wore a white fedora hat, proudly displayed his 11.5-carat diamond pinky ring, and would often pull out a huge roll of bills while out in public places. It was hard not to notice Al Capone. Capone was also known for his generosity. He would frequently tip a waiter $100, and he opened some of the first soup kitchens during the Great Depression. There were also numerous stories of how Capone would personally help out when he heard a hard luck story. Capone was so generous to the average citizen that some even considered him a modern-day Robin Hood. As much as the average citizen considered Capone to be a generous man and local celebrity, Capone was also a cold-blooded killer. Although the exact number will never be known, it is believed that Capone personally murdered dozens of people and ordered the killings of hundreds of others.